Fast forward to the year 2000, I had a traumatic brain injury where I was living in Boston. But after that happened, and I was kind of rebuilding my life, rebuilding what was important to me, putting things into a priority. Um, I realized that I needed to get back to drawing, and I needed to get back to that creative side of me.
Welcome back, everyone. Sitting with me today is Bernie, a true artist at heart, one who finds inspiration in every corner of life's vast canvases. From his tranquil retreat home in New York, where he battles life's storms with creativity as his shield. Together, we're about to delve into the depths of his imaginative world. So let's get started and see where this journey takes us, one story at a time. Bernie, welcome to the podcast, my friend. I want to jump right into our conversation because there's so much I want to cover with you. And the first question I have for you is your connection to creativity is both profound and unique. Can you share a moment where creativity was not just a form of expression, but a vital lifeline for you?
I certainly can. I certainly can. Yeah, so creativity has followed my entire life. And I've always thought that that was primarily uh, my ability to draw. I've been drawing since I was a kid. Like my earliest uh, most joyful memory is of drawing at 6 years old. So, that's where it started. And, I, and it's followed me through high school and to college. In college, I went for graphic design. Uh, and eventually, like, I kind of got away from drawing a little bit, not like completely, but not drawing as much. Um, Fast forward to the year 2000, I had a traumatic brain injury where I was living in Boston, and that's a completely another story. But after that happened, and I was kind of rebuilding my life, rebuilding what was important to me, putting things into a priority. I realized that I needed to get back to drawing, and I needed to get back to that creative side of me. I was going down a path of technology and stuff. Not that that's not creative, but I was just going away from what spoke to me. Um, and over the years, I would find myself drawing more and more. And I mean, so much so I was drawing every day. I made it a task to draw every day. I did sketch a day drawings for 2 years straight, every single day, just to get back into drawing what I wanted to draw. But it was never really fulfilling enough for me until I I found my voice to write. Um, I had been, I was a literature minor. I was very much a book nerd as a kid, um, but I never really wrote much. I wrote a little bit here and there, and then I realized I had a story to tell. And when I started that journey to write my own story, or stories, um, that's when creativity spoke to me the most. And I realized it took me that long to realize that it wasn't just about drawing for me. It wasn't, it was about more than that. It was about writing, and it was about creating and connecting, and like it just, my whole world just opened up at that point. Um, I believe, I firmly believe that that journey within writing helped how somehow some sort of cognitive development happened in my brain, and like I just reconnected to who I was as well as who I could be. Like it really, like, so much happened during that time. So I know that's a long answer, but that was a huge part of how creativity could speak to me and did. Yeah.
No, that's a perfect answer. And I know for those that don't know that's listening to this, I've had a brain injury, so I understand all that. Did you find, and I'm curious to know this because as an artist as well, I'm a much different artist. I'm more
Mhm.
abstract. Um, did you find after your brain injury it was harder for you to draw, or was it easier?
That's a lot of people do ask me that question. It's a hard one to answer. I don't think it was harder for me.
Mm-hmm.
I could still do it. The patience wasn't there. I
Mm.
didn't have the patience I have now. Um, I wanted things immediately, so I wasn't spending the time that should have immediately after the TBI. Yeah.
Oh, you were you still drawing though, at least? Like when you said you
I
did get,
was,
yeah.
I was, like after the TBI, I got back into drawing, but not deeply. I was actually thinking about career changes. I was thinking about going back and back to school, becoming an art teacher, and which I didn't do, which is fine. And I did start drawing more and more, and it probably took a good 6 or 7 years for me to realize like I need to draw every day. I need to spend time with this. Um, and those years, there's probably two years where I really developed my own style and became the artist that I know you always wanted to be. Um, yeah, but it just took time.
Well, that's amazing because I know for me, like, and I love your style. It is very unique.
Thank you,
It's very you,
thank
and
you,
and I'll put some pictures at the end on the video so
thank
people
you.
can see it because I really do appreciate it. For me, the colors, for art, for painting, messed with my brain.
Mm,
It was too much stimulation, and I know that may sound weird for people, but you know what I mean. The
I get it.
coloring, yeah, it was too much, and so I kind of had to step back from painting. But it's interesting that then you pivoted to writing because, to your point, I totally get how cognitively it helped you. But did you? I struggled with words after my brain injury.
Mm,
Like you could show me a pen, and I couldn't think of the word pen. You know what I mean? So did you have to overcome anything like that, or were you pretty good
yeah.
verbally after your brain injury?
Actually, my biggest deficit was reading
Really?
after TBI. That was my biggest deficit was reading. Reading and communication. I went to a speech therapist. I remember I do remember them asking me in the hospital to read something, and I was very dismissive about it. I was just like, you know what it says, like like I wasn't gonna take blame for not being able to read what they gave me. Which is kind of funny, right? It's like
Yeah.
the things that you do at the time. But yeah, um I spent months with a speech therapist to relearn how to communicate and read. And I still have, I can't read like the way I used to.
Yeah.
I'm way better. Uh, and to read out loud is a bit daunting. Because
Really?
yeah, it still is. But I can do it. I can do it. Just I can't do it like I used to.
Yeah.
But I think that having that taken away, uh, probably. I mean, I really don't know what my mindset was like at the time. Um, but I think it played into the fact that I eventually wrote a book. Like it definitely did. There's no doubt in my mind. But I'm so into stories and storytelling, and like that was such a joy to read and all that. And eventually, once I started doing it again, it just like it started to build into something else. And eventually, I just had this urge to write my story. And and we can get into that a little bit, like what that story was. Right after my TBI, I was having flashbacks of my childhood, and it
Mm.
was like vivid flashbacks to things I did as a kid, um, like just mostly in times in nature,
Mm.
like catching frogs and catching fireflies looking up at the sky, at the stars and whatever, it's just these wondrous moments all around us. And like they were so vivid. Like I describe them in the book, like they were like lucid dreams, but they were
Mhm.
like I would just be sitting at home and like this memory would pop up and I'd be like, was that even real? Like I called my parents and asked them. Of course, they weren't there for all of them, but they
Yeah.
were like, yeah, that happened or it didn't happen or whatever. Um, and I think that my brain was kind of rebuilding itself, rebuilding those memories, and in that journey, it became clear to me that that was helping me, that was
Mhm.
healing me. It became therapeutic. And then I was like, I think some other people would get a lot out of that. You know, to look at a spider web for 10 minutes and see how a spider like makes one. Like it's fascinating, right? Um, and just to understand, I mean, we just had an eclipse. To understand the probability of that even happening is mind blowing. I mean, with the size of the moon and the size of the sun, and for it to align and be the same size, like that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Um, and so you find that wonder in it. And I saw like an article in the paper this week, or not in the paper, but online, and it said, A Nation of Wonder was the title. And I was like, there it is, right? Like it's nice that people came together to view that because it is that it's that childhood view. You're like, see it, you're like, oh my God, that's like beyond, it takes you beyond who you are,
Yeah.
like you like connect to some other level um, that is just mind blowing. So yeah, but getting back to the book, like so that's what I wrote. This is just this kind of what happened to me and how that helped me throughout the years, and how that happens. Like those things happen every single day. Um, and so yeah, the book is called "Find Wonder in the Ordinary: A Kid's Book for Adults." So just so you, it's a guide to get back to the child.
It's a good one too. I thoroughly enjoy that because I could relate to that in so many levels. And what you're talking about is like I remember going to a meditation retreat in Vermont, up in the mountains, and it was at Carmicholing, and they did it. It was an art meditation retreat, so it was an art dolphin.
Mhm.
So there was art intrigued into our meditations and everything we did in storytelling. We had a professional storyteller there, and so she would share. But they had us do an exercise of going outside and finding something, anything, a blade of grass, a piece of bark, a flower petal. It didn't matter what it was, but find it and look at it. And then they would go, okay, now look at it again, and now
Yeah,
look at it again. You know what I mean? And they had us look at it for like 10 times. And you realize when you're sitting there in that moment, you realize how much of the world you miss,
right, right, right.
and that's
And
what your
and
book reminded me of is that
thank you,
wonder.
thank you. Yeah, and you take that even further. Then you start to understand with all of those little things and how it adds up, and just how eternal life is. Like there's so much to it.
Yeah.
There's so many levels to living your life, and every single thing that you come across, there's multiple levels to it. And then you take it to anything out, in space and stuff, and it's like there's times when I freak myself out with the stuff that I think of, but it's so true, and it just helps me because I know that there's just so much more to live for.
Yeah.
It's just like it plays into all of that. And you can get that. The crazy thing is you get that from a blade of grass. I mean, come on, how cool is that?
Oh yeah, I mean, and they because we were in the middle of the wilderness, so you're looking at rocks, and just they had an organic garden, and
Yeah,
it was just nature, and it was like pick something you see all the time, but now you're going to really look at it. And it was like, wow, I didn't notice these veins, or I never noticed, and it's just a
right, right.
it's one
Yeah,
blade of grass, and there's thousands. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. And you mow your lawn and it comes right back. You're like the most resilient thing in the world, and it's just your lawn.
But there's so much wonder, and then and then to your point where you say, I think about things that scare me, but then I think what I thought in that moment was, this is my perception of this blade of grass. What is an ant's perception of this blade
Right,
of grass, right?
right.
Like, or a dog's perception of this blade of grass or a bird's. You know what I mean? Because now you're seeing all different eyes on this at a different level and different heights, and like, what do they think it looks like to them?
Right, right,
And you can
right.
just
And
sort
I
of,
think about that all the time, especially in the mornings, like right this time of year with the birds chirping and the sun's coming up, and I'm like, what are they saying to each other? You know? Like, what are they like? Holy shit, it's a big ball of gas in the sky again. I thought that was gone. What are they saying?
it's funny you say that because I was literally sitting outside the other day with a cup of coffee, and it was, early morning, nobody was up, and you could just hear the birds just,
Yeah.
singing, 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 singing. And I'm like, are they waking up saying, hey, we made it through the night, we're here?
What are they saying?
What are they doing? Who are they talking to? So I totally
Yeah.
get that, which brings me to a question I have for you, because I read this, you had written it, and it says, you mentioned seeing voices and hearing landscapes, which I love
Mm.
those words together. And could you delve a little deeper into like what that experience is like for you? I know we kind of touched on that, but what is that like for you, and how does that influence your work?
Oh, that's a great question. So I said hearing landscapes and feeling,
You mentioned seeing
what did I
voices,
say?
hearing
Seeing voices,
landscape.
hearing, yeah. Well, it's you know, it's like you said, when you start looking at things from different perspectives, the more you do that, the more open your mind becomes to where your art will go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's times in nature where I do see voices. Like I've there's a there's a chapter in my second book called Seeing Voices.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it relates to a story that happened in the Adirondacks. And I just was walking through a field, you know, like I was just feeling all the grass near me. And at that point, like something, like some sort of wind came through, and I honestly felt like I could see what the earth was saying,
Mm-hmm.
or the universe was saying. Um, I've had it happen in at Walden Pond, same book. There's a story about Walden Pond and how when I revisited it, I could feel like, or I could kind of see the words of Thoreau like throughout the landscape. It's just like I think when you open your mind up to something like that different perspective, you you can feel more than just that one sense. It's more than just yeah. So like feeling the landscape, like when you really see something, you feel it.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily just see it. Um, and so it just like there's multiple times where I will experience something and it'll hit more than just one sense. And that really it it goes right into the art. Um, and a lot of my art, I'll meditate on a lot of the times,
Mm-hmm.
based on a story or something. I'll meditate on it, and then those images will come up. But a lot of them do come through those experiences where I've felt something more than just one sense. And when you hit all senses, that that that's when things get interesting. Yeah, they get
Well,
really interesting.
and I like that because for me, I lost my sense of taste and smell
Same.
from my brain injury, and 90% of my hearing. And at that same meditation retreat, we were in silence the whole time.
Mm,
So we weren't allowed to talk, which also gave you that extra sense of really tuning in when you're not allowed to speak. Um,
yeah.
and I remember the professional storyteller was actually my mentor, because you got assigned a mentor, and she had written to
Hmm.
me that maybe you taste now with your eyes.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like maybe
mm,
now, because I can't taste. And that was an interesting way for me to look at that and hone in and go, okay, I've lost these two and a half senses, for 10 years now. And how do I experience life? And after that, I went to the Olympic National Park. And to your point, I was walking down a trail, and I remember just holding my hands out to my side. And at that moment, I felt like the forest was talking to me. Like,
hmm
And you're right. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like a wind blew and I could just feel like this voice in this, like, I just knew it was like it's speaking to me and I had this connection
Yeah.
I never had.
Yeah. And when those connections happen, it becomes really difficult to describe what you're experiencing, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think, I think I've said in the past, like, I think poetry is like the eternal search for the right words,
Yeah.
because a lot of times you're never gonna find them, but you're gonna try. You're gonna keep dancing around it and try to get that explanation out, and that's where most of my writing comes from. I don't think I'll ever write exactly what I experienced because it's beyond words, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna try every single time because it tries to conjure up those words and try to conjure up those explanations of what you went through. It's really difficult to do, but I'll give it a shot
Well, do you
every
find
time.
then, like for me, then that's where my abstract art will kind of speak
Sure,
for that experience because it's to me it's like
absolutely.
there's no words. I don't know what words to put to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I would not doubt that at all. Those are your words.
Yeah.
You know, colors and whatever you put on paper, those are your words, and that's how you can convey that externally. Yeah, and do you have that urge or like it's almost like a not a nervousness, but it's like something speaks to you and you gotta get it out.
Yeah.
Do you find that when with your art? Yeah.
Yeah, I usually like you, I will see my art in my head sometimes before I do it,
Hmm.
and I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. You know what I mean? And it always comes out, but I've kind of gotten a little bit away from it at the tail end of my brain injury because it's been a long 9 years, of recovery. And I think I went into photography and, like you, I'm kind of getting back into writing. I kind of let that go. It was something that I'm like, okay, I need to kind of get back into that, but mainly my painting. I feel a huge urge right now to paint. Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, it's like you need to paint, you need to paint, you need to paint, and so I'm trying to get the supplies and stuff to get it back because I had to kind of get rid of them all. But there is this
Hmm.
huge urge of like just get it out on canvas, just
Yeah, yeah. And then you take that wonder to that whole other level of like, well, where is that coming from, right? Like, where does that come from? Where are you pulling that information from? I mean, people say it's from source or from the divine or whatever, and I believe all of that. But it's always a wonder to me, like, where is that coming from? And until you get it out, you're like, I don't know where it came from, but there it is.
oh yeah, and
That's
for me
all.
it just keeps growing. I don't know if that happens for you. Like if I ignore it or
Sure.
don't do it, it's like it's almost like I don't want to say it gets louder because it's not but it does. It gets like louder and more intense and more intense. Like, hey, go pick up the paintbrush.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that actually, the way I'll say the universe speaks to me a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what happens is that the universe will put out little clues and
Mhm.
remind me of what's speaking to me. Things will come into my space often, and and then I'll stumble upon something that reminds me to stay on track. And when you step off track, the universe just bumps you right back in again, like just with these little clues. And it happens in your real life. It doesn't even happen in your head. Like it happens like a lot of times it'll happen on the radio or put some song on. It's like there's no reason for me to hear that song right now. And there's several stories in both the books about that.
Yeah.
Just like the universe is just like giving those nudges, which is like I said, like it takes wonder to a different level,
Yeah. And how did
right?
you know that that's what the universe was doing? Right? Because I like to talk about these things because for people who, I get it. You and I have this knowing and this communion with the universe, but a lot of
Yeah.
people are just kind of learning that now and they're like, okay, well, how do I know I'm getting clues? Like, how did you know this is the universe speaking you, giving you clues?
I mean, the easy answer is persistence, but um, I mean, over time, it's become faith.
Mhm.
It's just become. I'm not a religious person. I don't follow a
Yeah.
specific faith like that. my faith is in the universe and how the universe is on my side. And whenever those things come in, it's just reaffirming for me. So, but going back, I think it's always been there. I
Yeah.
think since I was a kid, I remember that. A friend of mine, friend of mine, he said, he goes, weird things happen to everyone. Bernie just notices them. Like
I
he
love
said
that.
that in high school, and like it's so true. But
It
I
is.
mean, all these things do happen, and I see those things happen, and I'm like, that's what I have to follow. In my second book, I say there are clues and confirmations. You know, you get that initial clue at some point, and if you ignore it, you're going to get a confirmation right back at you. It'd be like, you forgot that we put this clue out for you. And it is just, it'll happen over and over. And if there are times where it doesn't happen at all, you know, um, and it's fleeting, right? But when it does happen, it just like puts such a smile on my face, you know, like right away, like there it is again. And it's
Yeah.
just a reminder, right? But yeah, that I know just because it's happened so often. Um, and it's like, I don't know that there is a religious, or a spiritual word for it or anything. I just know what speaks to me.
It's really just, I always tell people, and even clients I work with or whatever, it's intuitive hits, or it's your co-creation with the universe and whatever that is for you. You know what I mean? Like whatever that looks
Yeah,
like for you. But I always say you're always given messages from the universe. The thing is, are you paying attention? And the more you pay
yeah,
attention, the more they come in. Or it's just that what I say is you're just really noticing them more.
yeah, yeah. And as artists, we're observers, right? So we
Yeah.
just take all that in. Um, and it just can happen when the best is just when it happens and blindsides you. You know,
Oh, it
those are
does.
the
Yeah.
best.
And
Those are
there's
the best.
times, yeah. I mean, I would get feathers a lot. There was a time in Phoenix where I went and took the garbage out. No feathers, but in the garbage can. And I was thinking about something, and then I go out there and there's two feathers. And I was like, oh, okay. And I say, and then I got into the pool, and then I standing in the pool, and I swear to God, this teeny tiny little feather came down like
It's
this.
just,
It just like, I mean, it was the small, and I kept it. I was like, this is the smallest feather. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I get it.
yeah,
It was like, you're not paying attention. Here's another one. I was like, I didn't even
yeah.
know they made feathers that small.
There are even birds that size.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know there's hummingbirds. It was literally like this big. I was like, that's
That's
the
so
tiniest
funny.
feather, and it was weird that I
That's
even noticed it, but it came right down.
yeah. It,
You
yeah.
know, it was that
Yeah,
moment.
it reminds me of a story. Like I was watching the sunrise with somebody, and we were talking about like how we're all these universe talks like we're having right now. And as we're talking, we're saying like all this stuff about how the sun rises and the whatever, and like we're just in awe of like what the world is doing and everything. And like right at that point, a feather falls like right in front of us onto the water. There's no bird anywhere. Like it just fall like the universe is like, yeah, see?
Yeah,
Think.
and it is. It's
You're
like,
right.
what? How did that even happen? Where did that
Yeah.
come
Yeah, where
from?
did that come from? Yeah.
Right, but that's I
Yeah.
think to me that's just the magic of it. And so
It
I know
is.
you live
It
in
is.
remote New York. I'm from
I
Western
do.
New York. So where in New York
Yep.
are you?
I'm right in the middle of the state,
Okay.
kind of between Utica or between Albany and Syracuse.
Okay.
And I live pretty close to Colgate University. If you've heard of that, I actually work there as an
Yeah, I
art
had
art
some friends that
director.
went there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is they've changed the definition of the middle of nowhere. They say it's the middle of everywhere.
Well, that is kind of true. So
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can't argue with it.
no, you
It's
really
like,
can't.
and you look
So
at it and you're like, oh, very clever, very
right.
clever.
I'm like, oh, that's what I like that.
Well done, Colgate.
So do you think that environment where you are now, because I find that helps and also influences my art depending where I am. So you're in this remote part of New York, this environment, does it shape your creative process compared to maybe like living in a bustling city life? Do you find that
Absolutely,
that impacts it, and how?
absolutely. For me, it does. Um, you know, I lived in the city. I live in Boston, which is like it just wasn't me. Um, and I moved back here. I bought a house near here, um, and it was great. Like, and that's where I started drawing again. But then I bought a house in the middle of the country. I have a western view of like 8 miles or something like that,
Wow.
and like I have neighbors, but they're not really close, so it's very quiet, which I really enjoy. And that's when I started writing. Was when I after I moved. So I was like, there's something about this land
Right.
to me. And I bought the house to fix it up and sell it, and I haven't done it yet because I'm like a little like I don't want to let go of that just yet. But I have a feeling it'll stay with me and I'll be all right. But um, yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's some times where I'll have a stressful day or whatever, and I just have to go walk in the woods,
Mm.
and just ground myself, and something will happen. I mean, not always, but something will happen. Conjures up something for me to do artistically. But I do, there's something in nature that always speaks to me,
Mm.
always. So to be surrounded by it so much is highly beneficial for me. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that move to cities and that's where they get their inspiration. And I personally, I'll get inspirations in cities, but it's like a weekend trip, and I'm out of there,
Yeah.
and I'll take something. I'll take something. Um, but it's just not for me. It's not like being in a remote area like this.
No, I'm like you. Like I where, the nature is where I ground myself. It's just where things happen. I just find my center. So I would rather live in the country and visit the city
Hmm.
than live in the city and visit the country. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like to me it's just too
yeah,
much. The cities are too much energy for me. Um it feels like everything's going so fast and I can't handle
yeah,
that.
yeah. I agree. Yeah,
And it would have to be
when
brain
I
injury.
lived, well, and that actually part of my story is like my brain injury was in Boston, and um, it just got too much. Like after that, just like there was just, and I had it easy too. Like I lived in Cambridge. I I lived a mile from where I worked in Cambridge. Like I didn't have much of a commute. I didn't have to deal with a lot, but I still had to like figure out when do I want to go to the grocery store? Like what's the quietest time to go to the grocery store or whatever. So I was seeking out those really quiet moments, which I eventually was just like, well, I can go someplace else and find it all the time. Um, but yeah, that definitely played in like after my TBI and to this day, like I revel in quiet. That helps me along a lot.
Do you find that, and I had this, it's something I had to process after my brain injury was like, did you try, or I don't even want to say try, was it a consideration for you to look at your brain injury and go, what was the universal impact of this in my life?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, at first I felt like maybe I did something wrong, and I was being punished for it, whatever. And I look at it now. I mean, obviously it's very different from when it happened, but I look at it now as I don't use the word accident anymore because I
Hmm.
don't think it was.
Hmm.
It was an injury. It was unfortunate, but I'm exceptionally grateful for it now because I wouldn't have the mind I have now. I wouldn't have the curiosity I have now, although I was curious, but not like this.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have the connections to people I have now. I wouldn't have written a book, let alone two, you know. I just wouldn't have done those things. So I do think there was a, a grand plan to it somehow. But at the time, it was really hard. Like I thought, and I eventually moved back near my hometown. So it was very much like a starting over.
Hmm.
Um, like I went back to square one, and which is I mean, if you look at that and on everything I've already mentioned, that it all plays into each other, right? Like I went back to the writing or the drawings of a kid, like drawing like a kid. I was drawing every day. I was drawing like I was as a kid, and I was near my hometown, so I had to go back there to get to that kid again.
Mm,
Um, so it's hard for me to. I'm such a positive person, and I see that side of it a lot. So it's hard for me to even imagine what it was like back then because it's been 24 years.
yeah.
So it's a long time. I mean, that's lifetimes ago. I mean, I think I've had 3 lifetimes since then. Um,
Right.
I think I have. And yeah, so I forget the initial question, but I think you were just asking about like, did I think it was
A universal, like
not,
a
not,
spiritual reason. Because I'm like you. I look at it and think, not when it happened. When it happened, I felt like I was shoved into this dark black tunnel, and I'm like, I don't know that I'm gonna get out of this.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't know how to navigate this whatsoever. But now I'm coming up on 10 years, April 20th. I'm like you. I think it was one of the greatest blessings in my life. You know what I mean? It's put me in a whole new trajectory. But I always thought, because people would ask me, because I had a 1% chance of survival,
Mm,
and they'd be like, well, what kept you going or what? And I said, I really believe that it happened to me because my brain needed to be wiped clean of the beliefs and the consciousness it had so it could up level to a new sense of consciousness and wonder and experience of this world and this planet. And I know that sounds crazy to everybody, but
it doesn't to me. It
yeah.
doesn't to
So I
me.
was wondering if you had like a similar, like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I thought
Yeah,
I got
and
it before I get it now.
yeah, and I would go back to what I was saying before about like just the clues and the confirmations and the alignment. It was a big alignment by the universe. Like I
Mm,
was going down a path I shouldn't have been going down. Not that I was doing anything bad. I just wasn't being true to myself,
yeah.
and true to what my purpose of being here is. And now I know that because I am 100% sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
And what do you think that purpose is now?
Um, it's to
Yeah.
create, and to share those creations. You know, I've, I can get very spiritual about this stuff, and I think blindly I was creating over the years, not knowing my purpose. But I think now you create in honor of the creator. And so I think it's all in service. It's a reciprocal journey, with the universe. I will answer to the things that come into my space, the things that I know that are coming into my space, uh, for the right purpose. And there, like you said, how do you know? There's times when I'll follow something and I'll know, like something will happen, and the universe will tell me, like, nope, that wasn't it. Because the universe could be a trickster too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
It's got
got a
jokes.
yeah, it's got a great sense of humor.
It really does. I mean, it's like, oh, you okay? That's funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But to your point,
yeah,
when a path opens, at least for me, all the doors open. Like everything just boom,
yes,
boom, boom, boom. It flows with such
yes.
an ease that sometimes it's mind blowing. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
think about
yeah.
that even right after my brain injury because I had no healthcare coverage when it happened.
Mm,
So I had no way to get access. And then, I found Love Your Brain and it just the whole flood thing that opened up. And I was like, okay, this is just like you said, when you know. And when you don't, when it's not, the door shuts real quickly.
yeah,
And you can keep beating on it, but it ain't gonna
you
open.
could. It ain't gonna open up. No, no, it ain't gonna open up. Yeah, and speaking of Love Your Brain, like I got into the just a couple of years ago. Like
Mhm.
I was looking for, I wasn't sure what I was looking for. I'll be honest with you. I was looking for some place to give back to,
Mhm.
and some way to get involved with others who had TBIs. And so I contacted them. They invited me to the retreat. And on the second day there, I was like, this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
I know, like everything felt right. Um, it felt like coming home in a lot
Hmm.
of ways. And I've been, helping out the retreats ever since. So, and I don't see that slowing down. I mean, maybe it'll slow down, but I will not do it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just to speak to what speaks to me, like that did. And I didn't even know why at the time. I mean, I was 20 something years off of the injury, and I seeked it out for some reason.
Yeah, it's a feeling I tell people. I mean, I got fortunate. I went there their second year of even just being.
Mm,
So, and ironically, I had reached out to them because I found them on a website and they were talking about yoga. And I was like, I don't care about yoga at the time. I just wanted somebody who knew something about a brain injury and what do I do?
yeah.
And at the time,
Yes.
their director, she's no longer with them, but she had called me actually. And she's like, listen, applications are closing tonight for back then they called it a camp. And I'm
Mm,
like, what are you talking about? I didn't even know what she was talking about. And she's like, we
right.
have this camp, now retreat, that for seven, and then it was 7 days, but for survivors to come and meet other survivors. And so the universe lined, I mean, I was fresh out of the hospital.
Mm,
I shouldn't have been driving. I shouldn't have been doing, and I did everything I wasn't supposed to do, but I submitted the application. They accepted me the next day and said, yes, but now you got to figure out how to get here to Vermont. I was in Charlotte and I was like, I didn't care. I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to get there. Like, I
yeah.
need to go there
Yeah.
because these people at least understand it where nobody else around me did. So I get it for you. You know what I mean? And then once you walk in and you're surrounded by others who have had brain injuries, there's just this, I call it the deep breath. It's like, you
Yeah.
see
There's an
me?
understanding. There's an unspoken understanding.
Totally.
Um,
Yes, the
yeah.
way.
The energy. It was the energy there just gave me that feeling that all is going to be okay. Like, and
Yeah.
I am enough.
Yes.
You know, like
Completely.
we are all enough in whatever we bring to that space. Um, so yeah, it was a it was a profound experience. The woman who works um, the wellness, she came over to me that day, and she's, everything okay? And I'm like, things couldn't be better. I was
Yeah.
just quiet and I was on my own, and she goes, good, good. But I was like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Now,
And you just like,
go ahead. I didn't
but
mean to interrupt you.
I don't know, it doesn't matter.
I didn't mean.
I may never get that back.
Well, that's why I didn't want to interrupt. I know that feeling. It's like, oh, let me finish this sentence. What I was going
It's
to say
okay.
is, do you think, or have you shared with them even there? Because I know you're working at the retreats now and using art and storytelling to help them navigate their injuries, almost like a form of therapy.
I am. I get very involved in the mask making
Hmm.
exercise. I don't know if they had that when you were there. I get very involved in that, but they also have breakout groups. And the past two retreats, I've had a creativity breakout group. Basically, talks about mindfulness and how, once we get into that space of creativity, like everything just kind of, it levels out, right? It's just like you're in that present moment, and that's when things really start to speak to you. I can take it various ways. It can be a drawing thing, it could be a writing thing.
Yeah.
And both of the last two turned out to be writing. And I use my art to show them something, and then I'll write a story behind it or about it. And this all happens, like the writing happens in like less than 10 minutes, and
Hmm.
they all write like stories. Like, I never would have thought of any of that stuff. And I tell them that, like, every one of them is so different and so unique and so creative. We're all, and that's something I would love to get out there. Like, people don't think they're creative. We are all creative.
Yeah.
Every single one of us are creative. It's just how it comes out of us. It could be anything. It could be how you rearrange your sock drawer. I don't care. It could be whatever you think is, it could be how you arrange flowers in your front yard, or how you do your spice rack, or, anything like that can be really, really creative. And it's important to get into those moments.
It is.
Because to me, that's my meditation. You know, those are the moments that really ground me. And like I say, otherwise I'm being pestered. I'm really being poked and prodded, and like you gotta find that balance. Yeah.
Yeah, it never goes away. And that mask, for those that don't know, they do it in brain injury retreats. I had made 4 masks because when we started with Love Your Brain, we were invited back every year because they wanted to
Oh,
see
no,
how the
okay.
program was working. And so
Yeah. Yep.
finally I went for the first 3 years, and then they, we're like, okay, we had felt like that was good. We, you'd gotten all you got, let other people, because they had a wait list for
Yeah.
like 2 years.
Okay.
And then I moved up into like ambassador, working workshops, working the retreats, doing things like
Yeah.
that. So it was interesting for me to see the 4 different masks because we created these
Right.
masks and people
Right.
don't know. Yeah, you do these masks that represent your injury in some way, shape, or form. So you make them out of this, right, plaster. You do it with a partner, and then you get to decorate it, paint it,
Right.
embellish it any way that represents how you're feeling. And then there's a share afterwards that you all come together with your masks and share what it meant and what it represents.
Yeah,
And
and kind of what you're masking, what you're hiding from the
yes,
world, what you're showing to the world. Yeah.
yeah, and it's very
Yeah.
powerful. It's a very, I tell people it would be
It
very
is.
you're therapeutic even if you didn't have a brain injury to do.
I
um,
agree.
yeah, because I remember
I
the
agree.
first mask share, one of the caregivers stood up with her mask and put it in the center of the circle and smashed it, and
Mm.
everybody was like, oh, you know what I mean? And she's like, I'm not holding to this. This is just a part of what's happening in our life. It's not everything. So it's very cathartic and very powerful. But it was also interesting as an artist to see how my mask changed throughout the years.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I think I've done three over this time. And this past one, I just came off a retreat like 2 weeks ago. Um, and I didn't do one. It's the first time I didn't do one.
Really?
And yeah, and I just didn't, it's not like I was doing that on purpose. It's not like I was avoiding it or anything. And then I think I realized why, because I don't hide anything anymore. I don't
Yeah.
wear a mask anymore. I think that was a big part of it. And I kind of shared that in the circle, and I'm like, don't judge me for not doing it. I didn't do it. And, as an artist, that was kind of a weird experience for me not to do. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you have all that paint out and all that stuff out, and you're like, and I basically just watched. I got more joy out of this last retreat watching what other people created than
Hmm.
doing it myself. And it's gotten to the point where in those exercises, um, I think we present it in a way, it's a creative exercise, not an art exercise,
Right.
um, because art kind of freaks people out a little bit.
Yeah.
And now people don't even ask questions anymore. They go right in, and they come out with the most creative stuff, and it's so exciting to see it. And you can visibly see somebody blossom as they go through that exercise,
Yes.
and you see them connect with other people who are going through something similar. It's a wonderful part of it. It's probably my favorite part of it.
I would agree. And I think that, to your point, everybody is creative in some way, shape, or form. And you need to
Yeah,
find that outlet. I don't care what you're dealing with. It will help you express it, I think, in ways that you possibly can't or think you can't. And you
right.
don't even have to show
That
anybody.
you think you can't. Yeah, and that's important. Where they think they can't do it, and then
Yeah.
they do it, and then you're like, you see? I mean, I'm not here to point,
Right.
say I told you so, but I told you so.
Speaking of that, for you, is there a piece of work or a project that stands out to you that is particularly meaningful that you've done? I mean, we know you have your books and your things, but is there one piece of art or one particular paragraph, or is there something that just is like that really just speaks to me on such a level?
Um, that's hard. It's like asking someone who their favorite child is.
I know.
You know,
I
it's
know.
it's it's impossible to answer that. But I will say, like I am very, very proud of both of the books that I've written and illustrated. And that's important to say. I've illustrated both of them as well as written them. I'm very proud of both of them, and I'm exceptionally proud of the time that I finished them. At the time I finished them, that was my proudest moments. Like to
Mhm.
say that I did that. And if I go back, and I do, I go back and read those books once in a while, and I'm like, I can never write those again. Like those were just in that period of my life, and and I could say, I could answer the question like my favorite art is the one I haven't done yet
Mm.
because I think it's just going to keep going. That's my
Mhm.
journey. I mean, that's what I'm going to keep doing. I'm writing another book right now. Uh, Whether it'll be another book or not, I don't know. That's kind of an interesting place to be. Um, but yeah, I think it's too difficult to say like this is the best thing I've ever done or this is the proudest thing I've ever done. But I will say those collection of art and words are my proudest moments.
Now, is the new book or going to be similar to these other two books, or is it
Yes,
completely different?
it'll be similar. Um, I don't want to give too much away just because I don't know if
Yeah, yeah.
what will come out of it, what will stick and what won't stick. There are stories in the first one that I expanded on.
Mhm.
Um, that one in particular that just would not quiet at all. And that part of it's done, and it's just a matter of where I take it next.
Right.
Will it become like a small book? Will it become a series of stories in a book? Um, I haven't done any art for it yet, so it's really at the forefront. And I am working right now. I'm working on a children's book with my sister and my niece, so that's kind of taking precedence. And until I finish that, I'm not going to go back to the other one.
Yeah.
And I think I found like the first two books that I did them kind of in a rush. Looking back at it, especially the first one. The first one I did in 10 months,
Oh, wow.
and the second one took a lot longer, and that's the nature of what the book was.
Mhm.
Um, the second book, which is the Curious Reality and Imagination, that's really about what all the stuff that we've been talking about. It's
Yeah.
about how the universe can guide us and bring us through something. So that book started out as one thing and became something else because of how the universe was speaking to me, and then the book became about that process and how that works. So, um, yeah, so this one will kind of follow those themes a little bit. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, because I love the books and the fact that they're actually behind me back here.
Oh, cool.
Because I pull them and read them often because they do have a. I love that you took adult books and made them almost like a children's book. And I'm trying to say, like, it isn't a children's book, but it is. It has that essence of, like you said, wonder and excitement and
Yeah.
storytelling that I really loved. That because you don't see, I don't really know of any authors that are really doing
Good.
that.
Well, I mean, that excites me just because that's always been my focus
Yeah.
of kind of bridging a gap between um, something for a child and something for an adult. Um, so there are things I think that as adults speak to us that are childlike,
Mhm.
and then there's obviously a child still can relate to it, and I think my art does that. At least that's what I want it to do, because that's the world I live in. I have an appreciation for anything that speaks to a child, but I also want it to speak to me. So that's where it comes from. And I do a farmer's market in town. I started doing that a couple of years ago, and I never thought like my art would sell the way it does, based on the people that buy it. But I found that like parents were buying it for their kids, students were buying it for their dorms,
Mm-hmm.
and some people were buying it just for inspiration for their office. And I was like, wow, that was exciting to me because I mean, yeah, back in my mind, that's what I was trying to do, but didn't really, I never put a lot of hope out there. I put it out there like you would put out an intention, kind of float it out there.
Right.
And it all just aligned. It just like totally aligned. So I was pretty grateful for that.
Yes, it definitely has that energy to it, and I think
Thank
it
you.
that childhood. And I think we know, you and I know, you need that almost childhood wonder and innocence to connect to the universe, to see it in, because
Absolutely.
they're so innocent.
I've been thinking about like last week, and I'm sorry if I'm sidestepping here, but
No, it's okay.
we talked. Well, we tried to hook up this thing about 2 weeks ago, and it
Hmm.
just didn't happen. And you said divine timing. Well, and it was like that phrase has been coming into my space so much lately. And I realized like a lot of the stories that I tell in my books, that's what it is. And
Hmm.
it plays into the injury as well, right? It's like it happened. These things happen the way they're supposed to happen,
Well, yeah,
right?
and people don't even realize sometimes, like, you may get an idea, but the timing of it to be executed doesn't mean it's right then.
Right, right.
Right? Like, it might be something that you just have to sit with, or maybe there's more information you need to go gather or whatever. But some people think, well, I got this divine inspiration, I got to go do it now. And then they're like, well, nothing's happening or everything's blocking. And it's like, because divine timing is also at play.
Absolutely,
And I
absolutely.
realize that when things get canceled or get shifted or stuff, I'm like, it's divine timing. It just isn't the right time for that to happen, and it will when it's supposed to.
Yeah,
And
and it's so useful to have that as a I say it's a superpower to believe in that because you can go through something like recently I got summoned to jury duty
hmm.
and like didn't really want to do it, but I'm like there's got to be a reason.
Hmm.
There's got to be a reason I'm going to be there. And then of course I actually get picked for jury duty. I'm like there's got to be a reason for this.
Yeah.
And so it does help you. And eventually something will come out of it. Something will happen and you'll be like, well, there it is. There's the reason,
Oh yeah, I
right?
mean, I've had that happen like 2 years later. Something, a memory will come back and it'll connect, and I'll be like, "Oh, that's why that happened."
Yeah, yeah,
It makes
yeah,
perfect sense now, but I didn't know it then. And so it's like, even then, I'll tell people, if you're not supposed to know right now, divine timing, you're not supposed to. The universe will tell
yeah,
you exactly what you need to know.
yeah,
So it's one of those things people struggle with, but I agree with you. I think it's perfect, and it makes things so much easier because you realize, okay, it's just not supposed to happen right now.
yeah. It does make it's just like, yep, okay,
Right.
yeah,
So as
yeah,
we wrap this up, I wanna ask you two questions. For
sure.
someone listening who might be going through their own trials, what advice would you give about finding and using their creative voice as a source of strength and healing?
I mean, for me, it's solitude. It's
Mhm.
it's letting it come to me, respecting whatever power there are for it to come to me. But and solitude helps me do that. I know that doesn't work for everyone, and that's why I'm kind of, you can probably hear it in my voice that I'm not really pushing it out there, but I will say, like, just to be open to it, is probably that's a part of it, whether you are good with being on your own or not. Just be open to when it'll come and be patient. I firmly believe all of life is a series of learning moments, and we'll learn. You gotta be open to learning from it and see where it takes you. And I know it can be frustrating as hell because I've been through that.
Yeah.
I haven't been through it like some others, but I've been through it to my own extent, and I definitely see myself on the other side of whatever I went through. I almost feel like I'm going downhill and throwing my arms up in the air
I feel that way
because,
too.
right? Don't you feel that way? It's like, whee!
Yeah, like 10 years, I finally feel like I'm on the other side, and it's like, oh, we've
Yeah,
crested the roller coaster. Now we're going down.
yeah, absolutely. And I say this at the retreats. I it's it take me, 17, 18 years myself to have that feeling. And if going to those retreats or writing books about this stuff helps anyone shorten that time, then that's the purpose, right?
Yeah.
That's yeah.
That's
Because time is a thing. It's a thing, man. We only got so much of it.
I know it really is, and I think when you have a brain injury and you come close to death, or your life gets just disheveled like that,
Yeah,
it puts things in a real perspective and understand. But we also have the flip side of it takes a long time. I don't say recover because I don't feel
I
like we
agree.
do. I feel like we adapt. We adapt and learn how to be now, and the brain takes a slow moving train to do that.
Yeah, what I usually say, so TBI creates gaps in our, you know, and it just takes time for us to reconnect, either how we used to or reconnect differently. And I call it the scenic route. Like you get to
I love that.
because otherwise, you're not gonna experience what life has to teach you if you reconnect the way you did.
Yeah.
You're just not. And that's such a parallel to what creativity is, right?
Yeah.
Take the scenic route. Spend 2 days drawing something and then throw it out and start over because you learned something, and you went a scenic route. So,
Well, and I remember my friend Ray at the retreat. He had a stroke and he couldn't draw anymore with his. I don't remember if it was his right hand.
mm,
So he would be in the kitchen area in Vermont, where we would all meet every morning before everybody else, drawing. He was trying to teach his other hand how to draw.
mm,
And
hmm
so he would wake up before all of us. He would be ending the day there, and we'd go in, and there would be Ray drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing. And he got it to the point where years later he could draw, like his drawings were amazing. You know,
that's awesome.
yeah, it was just his quiet time of just, and I would always say, "How you doing?" And he said, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there." And you look at his first drawings compared to his drawings now, and they're just night and day. But it was like, you can do it. Like you said, it's going to take time and patience and solitude. Really, he was alone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My journey has isn't that extreme, but it is like I do some public speaking stuff, and I actually go through those years of drawing every day, and you can see such a difference between my first ones and where I am now. Like it's drastically different.
That's probably a book.
Um, it could be.
Just a thought. I'm just throwing that out there. I think it would be a very profound, impactful book
It could be.
to
I never thought
see
of that.
somebody go from here to here. Just the visual of that, it would be very inspiring.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely could be.
Because
It
that
could be.
takes patience to do that. So just ponder that. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. I'll ask everybody. It's a little deep, but that's okay. In a world constantly seeking answers, what's the most powerful question you've asked yourself that led to profound shift in your perspective or your life direction?
Oh, it has. I have two answers. One of my answers is why am I still here?
I get that.
I ask that a lot. Why was I allowed? Why was I allowed to continue on? Another part of my story is a year after my injury, I was diagnosed with leukemia. And if I didn't have the brain injury, it probably wouldn't have been caught the time it was caught. It was caught very early. And I went through some medication and stuff, and I'm totally in the clear. And, that was those 2 years, that was just like, that was being confronted with, the other side. And so it's hard not to ponder all of that. And then when I sit back now and I'm like, well, there's got to be a reason why I'm still here. So that's why I create and that's why I do what I do. And I have to give you a second answer just because it's just so perfect for right now. I constantly ask myself, why the hell not?
Ooh,
Like,
that's
why
good.
can't something be? It has become it's like if you worked with me like in my professional career, you'd be sick of that phrase because it's a huge part. Like in my professional career, I was a graphic designer, I was a creative director, um, and I'm doing that stuff now at Colgate, and but it's all creativity, and it's like when people say, "Well, we can't do that," I'm like, "Why the hell can't we? Like why can't we do it?" Um, and it was kind of a so, and then I was at uh, I've always wanted to get that as a tattoo.
Yeah.
Why the hell not? And I was at the retreat just a couple weeks ago, and I've been thinking about getting that tattoo, and I kind of was like, do I really want to get that one? I don't know. Do I want to get that one? And so someone gave me a book that they wrote, and this was like from someone who went through something similar to you and I. And their book is called Impossible with a question mark, and they went through all this stuff that they said he wouldn't be able to do.
Hmm.
And in the very first the intro to the book, he actually says why like
Why the hell
people
not?
say I can't do something, and I say why not? And I'm like, well, hell yeah. So I went out, I got that tattooed the other
Oh,
day.
nice.
So I don't know if people can see that for
Yeah.
our podcast, but I got it on my forearm. I've been thinking about it for like honestly for like 2 years, and it's just something simple that I just want to see once in a while, and I can just hold it up for people instead of saying it. But those are the two things that I say quite a bit.
That makes sense. And right, that's another sign. It's like you're thinking, do
Yeah,
I get this tattoo? And like, here's a book with the first line being, why?
yeah. The first, yeah, it's right there. I was like, of course it's right
I mean, there
there.
could have been any other words, but no, it was right.
Yeah, pretty much what I was going to get tattooed on my arm.
Right.
Yeah, and
So,
then and it just like it surprises me, and then it doesn't surprise me, and it's like, holy shit, and then you're like, no, that's the way it's supposed to work, and no matter how often that happens, I always smile. You gotta smile.
I do too, because it just reminds us really that we are the creators of our reality. You know what I mean? And we can co-create
Totally.
with the universe. And to your point, I love that question. Why the hell not? You know what I mean?
Why the
Because
hell not?
I know so many other survivors. There's another one who was in my original group. Her book is getting ready to be published. I think it's called Strength. And similar to what
Nice.
you're talking about, she was told she'll never walk again. She'll never have a beyond a fourth grade education. And here she graduated from college with an associate's. She's, walked with a cane so much. I mean, everything that the world tells you you can't, I think I've seen more and more survivors defy the odds
Yeah.
and say, oh, yeah, you can. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's so much that science really doesn't know, or I should say medicine doesn't know, um, that, you know, t at times you just got to take it into your own hands, listen to the experts, and then decide for yourself that, do I have the will to do this? Do I push through this?
yeah.
And most likely you do. Most likely you do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a great way to end this. So, my friend, where can people find your work? Where they can connect or buy your books? Where would be the easiest place to do that?
Yeah, so my website is berniefreitag.com. Um, you can buy anything there. Well, not anything. You can buy most things there. You can get my books on Amazon. You can search by my name, Bernie Freitag. You can search by book. Um, Again, the books were Find Wonder in the Ordinary, a kid's book for adults, and The Curious Reality and Imagination, a Creative Odyssey. And you can also find me on Instagram at Wandering Bernie.
Hmm.
Um, so that's the only one I usually push. You can find me other places, but I don't do a very good job there.
And like as usual, you guys know I will have all of this stuff listed if you're on YouTube on the description, if you're on the podcast, also in the description, where you can just click and grab Bernie's stuff. Thank you, my friend, for being here. I appreciate you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. I had a blast. So fun.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. Everybody stay curious, stay empowered, and keep shining your unique light. And we will see you in the next one.